Welcome to That Entrepreneur Life, a podcast about entrepreneurship that takes you from idea to launch and beyond. Each week, your hosts, Andrew Lees and Clint McPherson, discuss different business topics aimed at adding value to any entrepreneur's journey.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Entrepreneur Life. I'm Andrew Lees, and I'm joined, as always, with my co-host, Clint McPherson. What's up, man?
Not much, brother. I'm just excited to be here, as always. And outside of that, I don't want to waste any time. I want to go ahead and kick this thing off by welcoming our special guest, Doc Williams, to the show.
Hey, everyone. How's everyone doing today?
Good. How's it going, man? It's great to have you on the show. We've been very excited about this episode. And before we get into everything, can you just tell our audience who you are and what you're all about?
Yeah, so my name is Doc Williams, and I'm a solution architect. And so that basically means I create a framework to solve problems. That's it.
It basically means that you're the man. You know what I'm saying? So with all that said, obviously, I thought you were going to give us more, but hey, check this out. You've worked with a wide array of companies, right? Along the way, to include ESPN, to AppSumo and Vaynermedia, correct? So right now, you're a brand developer. And I mean, I think that's powerful, and how you've taken that with Brand Factory. And so you're the founder of multiple companies, right? So can you take us back to where your entrepreneurship journey started, man, and what it is specifically about entrepreneurship that keeps that fire burning inside you on a daily basis, man?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just always love selling things and making people happy and seeing how people react. So, I mean, I never really remember a time when I was like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. I was just like, I want to make money. And also I like seeing how people react when you give them a gift or have an experience with them. So my very first business is probably I think everyone's done this, but I had a candy and trading card business starting around about 7 or 8, probably 7 or 8. It was around second or third grade. And that pretty much kicked it off. And, I mean, if you want, yeah, so that's where it started. And then I can go through from there.
No, I like that, man. It seems like it came natural, right? Like you just fell into it, even though at an early age, you had what you just said, the candy and card business, but it just seems like that transition just came naturally, right? Again, you're just trying to add value, help people out. And then that's where, again, you wanted to make money, and here you are, right?
Yeah. I mean, I remember my older sister, because I'm the youngest out of 3. And so I have 2 older sisters, and like my oldest sister, were about 8.5 years apart. And when I first opened the store, she was in high school and she wanted Snickers and a Coke. And she always remembered, it was like, those fun size, like mini size Snickers, charged her like $4, charged her like, I don't know, $6 for a Coke. And I was like, that's supply and demand. I knew it then. I was just like, you at the time she couldn't drive, she couldn't leave. And I was like, you want this? So I just raised up the price. She still remembers that. But I don't know. I could always tell, like, okay, what's the trends? What could I do? And so
what's somebody willing to pay for something?
Yeah.
And you get a feel for that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, you just use what you have, right? There's candy around the house. You just whatever you can. Yeah. That's really cool.
So I mean, I started there, and then I became a wedding DJ around 12. And that just happened because I was really interested. Like, I found out my siblings were always doing other things. So they were into Beastie Boys and Beck. And I discovered turntables. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. So, I bought turntables. I started DJing. And basically through high school, end of middle school, all the way through college, if I needed some money like real quick, I could always find a gig. I could always do that. And so, I mean, that just became like, I always had a side hustle to do that, and then just doing different jobs. So I did that, went into massage therapy. I became a massage therapist, then became a physical therapist assistant, then opened a couple gyms. You tell me when you want me to stop. And
that's great, brother. I mean, you've already gave us a lot. Yeah, you already gave us a lot.
I was going to ask you about the gym thing. So yeah, you started, I mean, it's an interesting transition from, I was listening to your story, and it's like, you're a digital marketer and a no-code developer, but it didn't start out that way. It wasn't like you were always coding, or you didn't necessarily do that in college. But I think it's really cool, your journey to that, from physical therapy. Then you started a gym, and then there's some Ninja Warrior stuff in there too.
Yeah. Craziness.
Yeah. What was that experience like? I guess, what was the experience like owning a physical thing, and then now you do digital online?
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, you were saying like didn't code in high school. I tried to code. I was terrible at it. This was when Dreamweaver first came out, Visual Basic, C++, and I tried it and it sucked. And I was in class for it, and then I was running my eBay store at the same time. I was selling hero clicks and all of these little figures. So I was like miniatures. So I was like, you know what? I can't do this. I hate this. No, it's not for me. So when I opened the gym, really the gym was just because I started doing CrossFit probably in 2007 when I was in college, and I just loved it. And then I was thinking like, I was already teaching, I was already into fitness. I was like, well, how can I make money off this? I need to open up a gym. Now, this is the thing. I never understood what it really meant to have physical product or running a physical space. And that is something I ended up hating. But yeah, it was a really good learning experience. I think it was just the dream of it. The problem is, especially in like health and wellness and exercise, you want to help all these people, and you're like, man, this has been fun. I can, train people. But when you own the physical place, when you have to manage other personalities,
it's a disaster, right?
It's a hot mess.
Especially when your heart isn't really in that, right? I mean, again, you were in that space, and it would seem like, hey, you're going after it. I'm going to start this up, get it up. But again, man, when it comes to managing something and you're doing it, and it's something that you're not like in love with in that portion of it, it's like, I can't do it, man. Cannot do that. So tell us how that transition from the actual physical gym to one of the biggest parkour, spaces. That seems like it'll be a little more exciting, but then you're still around the same. If you're not that ninja guy, the Ninja Warrior, man, it seems like it's going to be very hard.
Yeah. I mean, it just kind of fell into place. I mean, it's just really weird. It's just really weird. The place where we had the gym, it was an old equestrian track. It's in the middle of Western Maryland. Like, it's a giant location, and they just renovated it, and it was for the Police Athletic League. And so I was training a lot of police officers. I was training a lot of firefighters at the time. And so we're in the bottom where all the horses were, right? So they refabbed the whole place where the horses used to be. Where the stands were, that was free reign. And it was literally 4 levels. And one of the guys on Ninja Warrior on the world team, he lived 15 miles away from the place. And the guy was training, he was going into BUDS training for military. And he's like, I got this friend that's on Ninja Warrior. He needs a place to train. He's been on all these seasons. And so we brought him down. And he's like, listen, I can tell you what you need to build. And if you build it for me, I'll promote it, whatever. And just one of the guys that was working out at the gym, that was when like Spartan races were really hot, and, Tough Mudder. And he's like, and he was a carpenter, and he was just crazy. He could build anything. So he literally built the every level. So the entire track and course for this guy. And so we just did that. And I mean, we literally, it's an entire equestrian, and we had the entire park. And the deal was, for the Police Athletic League, they're like, listen, Doc, you're helping out the police officers. You're not charging. We'll give you all this stuff, and just take care of it and make sure that you do a good job. And this is for the community. So we just built the whole thing up, and that was it.
That's really cool. Yeah. I saw some video of it. It looks really awesome. It's just like, a really interesting, unique site, place. And it looks wide open, and like there's plenty of space. I went to a Ninja Warrior course Ninja training course in Texas, not too far from San Antonio. Really cool course. It was a father and son who were on the show, who they and their and the guy's mom, they run it. They had an indoor and they had an outdoor, and it was really cool, but it wasn't like nearly as big as the operation that it looks like you guys had. Just they didn't have that much space, so.
Yeah, I'm athletic and everything, but it looks like a big space that I would get hurt in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I was like, I'll leave that up to the American Ninja Warriors, and y'all have fun with that.
It's really hard. Yeah, when I tried it, there's some stuff you can I could do, but like I was actually the best at the warp wall. That thing.
Yep. Because you're so tall, man.
I think that was it.
It doesn't take much.
Yeah, I didn't have to ride a couple steps, and I just grabbed the coping and pull myself up. But like grip strength.
Oh yeah,
unbelievable how you look at those guys and you're like, they look pretty strong, but the grip strength is like next level.
Yeah. No, it was fun. We built salmon ladders and we had a ball out there. And I would always say like that was the thing, because we had the parkour in the CrossFit gym. It was very much known. We were pretty much like the hippie gym, because it was just, we didn't do anything normal. It was just for fun. And we just had an interesting cast of just people. We had MMA fighters, we had parkour people, and a lot of MMA fighters would go there too, because it was just really unconventional maneuvers, but also like you were talking about grip strength. A lot of people for BJJ, they loved it because it was just insane. That place was insane. So yeah, it was fun. Did you also ask me how do I transition to digital? I forgot the question. I'm sorry.
Well, just like, it was interesting how how you started with that, and then you got into digital. But I did want to ask you about no code, right? So like we can circle back to that. So I do physical. We talked about it a little bit offline, but I do physical product development. But apps are really cool because there's no manufacturing costs. That's something that I deal with all my projects, is like you get through development and then bam, there's tooling costs, there's prototype, there's tooling, there's, production runs, there's where you're going to put it in a warehouse, and how are you going to fulfill it? But with apps, it just eliminates all of that. You've got to pay for server space, obviously, but it really reduces the risk and the barrier to entry. But can you kind of explain, some of our listeners might not know what no code development is. Can you explain what that is, and what is it about no code that excites you?
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you the definition, but keep in mind the definition of no code, or because it's more of in its infancy, others might say it's something else. So basically it is allowing you to create a application or a type of business without needing to code any lines of code. So you do not need to use CSS, Java, Ruby on Rails. You don't need any of those things. Now, the no code space is very close to like no code or low code, which is where you're using a minimal amount, or you're understanding the concepts of code and you can change small pieces of the project that you need to. So the strict no code means that you are not injecting any kind of code or custom anything. You're just using stuff to build, building blocks to build whatever you want.
Yeah, man, that's pretty on point right there. I would agree. When it goes to, have you seen? And I don't know, it was hot the other day when I was online. I saw this guy. He developed this. I guess it's an application where you speak what you want. This is called like GT3, and it like makes the web page for you. So I was reading it. The guy he developed something to where it's like you can actually verbally speak it right to the computer. You push this button. You say, hey, like he used the Google page as an example. You know how that landing page is like when you go to Google, it has the bar, it has the two buttons on the bottom, and it says Google. He said, I want the Google image, right? And when he put the Google image, it threw the Google image up there automatically for him. He says, I want a search box. And then I want two buttons that say A and B, right? Like whatever it says at the bottom. And then, man, it had it up there within seconds. And then you're able to modify it too, because what it does is when you speak it, it takes it, it puts it in the application, but then gives you the code off to the side. So if you are a coder, you can fix it quickly. Or if you don't like what it came up with when you speak it, you can change and modify it. And dude, I was blown away by that concept and idea. And again, off the top of my head, it was something that it was real late at night. It was one of those times where you just find yourself just aimlessly on the internet, doing research on things, but stuff you can't really, but I want to say it's GT3, but he pulled it out, man. And my mind was blown, because I'm like, if it becomes that, like he's leveraging artificial intelligence, I said, that's on another level that I'm sure a lot of people thought about, but haven't figured it out yet. And he's on to something with that.
Send me, if you find that, or the company, sure. I just try to look it up. But and that's the thing. There's so many, because Andrew, like you were talking about, it's because you don't need to have a production cost or whatever. People can iterate so much quicker. That's why it's always like, there's at least 20 new no-code platforms like weekly that someone's just dropping and stuff like that. I mean, all the way from like, what is it? I always forget. It was like Random Pizza, where you can sign up, and then for $20 a month, you just get random pizzas at your house from Domino's as gifts. And like he built it with no code.
That's awesome. It sounds pretty good.
Yeah, see, exactly. So
not a terrible idea.
And like it's fun projects. It's more serious. It's whatever. But I mean, that's So what excites me about no code is for you to create a MVP or create what you want. It is very, very easy to start doing this. The flip side on that is I find that because it's easier to be able to launch things, I've seen a lot of people, it now becomes like a giant ocean, and now they're just trying all this random stuff, and they don't think about the systems of operation of like, but why are you doing this? Like, what do you want me to test? And they're like, oh no, like, well, I'll get some VC money. We'll do that and that. And I'm just like, but like, we need some direction. We need to start doing it. But I mean, I think it's a lot more leaner teams or solo entrepreneurs are going to be able to create micro SaaS, micro SaaS companies a lot easier because of these tools. So yeah, it's going to be getting started. But I would like to say a lot of times this no code space and like using Zapier and all of these things, the reason I even fell into no code is like a year and a half ago, because I've worked with AppSumo and tons of these no-code tools. I'm like, this is just AppSumo tools, like from like years and years ago. And people are like, it's this movement. So with my friends, I was developing something. I was like, people don't really understand me. He's like, why aren't you in the no-code space? I'm like, I haven't even, what people are saying this now? And so I just called them to, like, I just needed something. I just need to build something fast. It wasn't a thing. So no code, the movement, everything like that, it's so new, but I love that it's bringing in developers, it's bringing in makers, and also, all different types of people, and they, gravitate towards this term. So it's a beautiful thing to see.
I specifically like no code, and I have some experience in operating in it. I totally, the software I was using, I'm drawing a blank. But I started using it about 2 years ago, and I was like, oh man, this is an easy way to make, apps and put it in the app store and then get it on Android and all this stuff. And it reminded me, because I'm a digital marketer. So it reminded me of the drag and drop builders that are coming out, right? It simplifies everything, makes things easier, but there's always that limitation. There's something that you want to add to it that they don't have yet. And so sometimes it can get frustrating. And that's where it's like, if you can be the no code developer, and own that software and continue to go forward with it and add those things that you see are missing from these other softwares, you can take things to the next level quicker. And so there's like, I want to add this, I want to do that. And then it's like, man, this software has 75% of my solution, and it's so easy to get to that 75%, but that extra 25% it's not that they haven't thought about it, because they might have. But, you start asking, and they're like, well, yeah, on roadmap, that's like 5 years from now. I'm like, dude, if you can develop this, like, I will pay for you to have it developed so we can integrate it into this and make some money, because if you did it, it would just smash and slay everything out there. But I'm not saying, look, I'm a huge believer in no code, just like a huge believer in some of these drag and drop builders. And if it can make life easier for you, great. But there are limitations. And I try to, when I educate my clients or customers, I always let them know there are limitations, right? It's limitations that sometimes you can get around and sometimes you can't. but you always got to figure out what is the purpose of this. And then why am I recommending you do something that you might not want to do initially because it makes more sense in the long game for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I don't have much more to say than that. I don't think limitations are a bad thing. I think a lot of times people will be like, well, they can't do the whole thing. I'm like, let's max out the 75% first. Let's go there. And then if so, we'll look at how much money it's making, how much time. And now you can invest and either get it really coded or we'll look at something. And that's where it comes into like low code, because I think a lot of times I use probably 85%. I use probably technically no code. And then I look at low code because I can look at API documentation and then I'll go out and do the rest of it. So a lot of no code or no coders or being in the space, a lot of them can't read or do things with API documentation. But if you can do that hump that you need, you can do API calls all day. And then you can use something called like nocodeapi.com. And then you just build it out right there and then you're done. So yeah, there's a lot of, I think with no code, a lot of people get stuck on like, okay, am I going to build in Bubble? Am I going to do a Dalo? Am I going to do, I like, there was an expression I heard years ago, and it was just like, see the handle, not the tool. I need the handle to know what kind of job I need to do. I don't care if it's a sword, if it's a hammer. I just need the handle to know where direction, what I need to do. And with no code, I peel back, or I try to with clients. I'm like, no, just tell me, how is the user going to use it? What would it look like? What do you want to feel like? What's the objective? I'm not going to tell you what tool yet. I need to know all of the things you need to do. And then I'm going to tell you, okay, based on this is what it can do. This is the limitation. Instead of, I mean, how many times I almost started drinking severely when I learned how to use Bubble like 2.5 years ago. Like my friend, he gets it so well, and he can do Ruby on Rails. Like he understands. I hate Bubble. I tell people, I'm like, I can do it. I can show you what I'm talking about, but I'm like, I can probably do 95% of the things I need to do without using Bubble. Now, if it's advanced things, whatever, more power to you. And Bubble, like, it's huge. But for the most part, people don't need to use it. I hate to be like that. And I know, listen, I'm sorry.
That's good to hear, because I use Bubble. I think I was telling you offline is that I tried Bubble a couple of years ago. I was trying to develop something, and the first thing I did was, because I didn't want to get ahead of myself and just totally dive right in. I actually built it off of a tutorial. So I bought a tutorial and I went through that, and it was like, I don't know, 30 or 40 hours. And just that, I mean, they showed you exactly what to do and it still didn't work right. So I'm like, man, this is brutal. And it looked like garbage the whole way through. So like the user interface, which I'm sure at the end of it, they fine-tuned it, but in the meantime,
not really.
Oh man.
So they've built in an integration with Figma now, but it just came out. So it's going to look better, but I mean, up until even a couple months ago, and then you're going to have to know Figma to be good at that, to do layers, to do this too. With Bubble, I met this one guy. He's out of DC. His name's Andrew. I went to a Bubble meetup. It was the end of like last year. And the best thing they ever told me, he used index cards and he taught me the logical components of Bubble, just using index cards. And that was the best like aha moment I've ever had with Bubble, because the tutorials, I felt like they're heavy. They're very like, you do this. In my head, it just never clicked. But with the index cards, how he was saying like, okay, there's databases, it's over here. This is your user. And he had me write it out on index cards. And he's like, okay, so if you want to do this and we just move the index cards around, I was like, got it. And then I built a mock-up of Product Hunt in like 45 minutes. It's because the logical base of like that was there that I haven't seen online. I keep begging him like, you need to put yourself out more on Twitter in the no code environment, because I'm like, that just made all the difference. Now, I will still say it looks ugly, and I wouldn't say ugly. It's just not, there's just so many better looking platforms than that. I understand, but the power behind it, the databases, no one can touch it in no code. But to me, I'm looking to prove my concept, and I need people to imagine what it can do. I need it to look good. So that's why I can't use bubble most of the time. Now, there are some great people that can make it look good. And there's like No Code Club, Pierre out of, I think he's in Europe. I forget what country. He's a killer. I love what he does. But yeah, I just don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you're trying to, do something that's low tech and you're not trying, by the time you really get into something like bubble, it does seem like it's like, well, I might as well just like learn how to code because you know what I mean? It's almost like getting a frozen meal that takes 30 minutes to like cook it. It's like, I'll just cook this from scratch, or I don't know. That's probably a bad example, but you might as well just go all in at that point. So, but yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Oh, one last thing. It was called randompizza.io.
Randompizza.io. Okay.
That's all.
That'll be good for people to know.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Just have random pizzas show up, and you're like, you go through that. For me, I'm married, so it's like, what do you want to eat tonight? And it's like, I don't know. What do you want to eat tonight? And it's like, you just have a random pizza show up at the right time. You're like, eating pizza.
Solid. Yeah, it de-stresses the situation right away.
De-escalates the quick. You're like, problem solved. So Doc, man, after getting your start in digital marketing about, over 10 years ago, you began facilitating live streaming for brands back in 2015, and you started to bring your knowledge and expertise to a wider audience, right? With your show, Build With Me, where you build 3 businesses in 1 hour with the tech tool, which I'm just like, man, that I've caught several episodes and man, it's good stuff. How did that idea come about, and how has the power of live streaming helped you level up your own business?
Yeah, I mean, so the concept came out probably during COVID. It happened at the beginning of COVID. So before all this with clients and everything, I always try to streamline. I try to prioritize everything. So originally I had a marketing agency. I was working with a bunch of companies, and when you have monthly meetings, you had to review, and they just were stale and everything. So I would just send videos and I would just walk them through. I'm like, we can get on the phone or we can jump on Zoom later, but like, let's just go through what I'm thinking and everything like that. And for years, people would say like, you know what, I really like your videos, or like, Doc, just send me a video. Like, we don't need to meet. But I always had people, they're like, Doc, if you do too much extensive videos, like people will never pay you. And like, you're just going too deep, like blah, 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 like all this foolishness. And so during COVID, I was losing tons of clients, because a lot of it feels like it's been a couple of years, but like March was like,
it does. It feels like years.
Oh my goodness. Like March was just a dumpster fire, and I was just losing a lot of clients. And so I always had streamed before for other companies, and I was like, you know what? I love streaming. I love talking about business. And this was the catalyst. I kept seeing people on LinkedIn that had more money than me, kept saying like, we just got to lean in, we'll make it. And like giving this really ambiguous words of wisdom, quote unquote, of like, you can make it, just hang through. And I was like, listen, that's not helping people like make money now.
Right. It's not a solution. Yeah. Hang through. If you've got nothing right now, how are you going to hang on to nothing through the whole thing? Yeah.
Yeah. And it just rubbed me the wrong way. And I was like, forget all this. And I was like, then I get really competitive. And so I was like, you know what? Everyone's saying all these words of wisdom. I was like, I'm just going to just scorch earth. I'm going to just demolish these people, because I'm going to show them how to build. I was like, I'm going to do 40 nights straight, and I'm going to build 3 businesses every single night. And I was like, let's just see what happens. And I was like, I'll just live stream it, because I was like, people don't have money. You can't afford me, whatever. I was like, if you really want to do this, I can show you how to make money, and I'll go step by step. I was like, if you want, it was like, just build with me. If you want to be online right now, I'll just start streaming. So that's what I did. So I built 120 businesses in 40 days. And then when I started doing that, then people started noticing, and people were like, well, can you consult on this, or can you speak about this? And I really think the reason I love live streaming is if you do videos or you do anything that's highly edited, I don't want to say you can front, but you can always sound smarter than you are if it's edited. And I kept seeing a lot of people, they're like, oh, I know this. I'm like, I've talked to you before. You don't really know that. And so I was like, okay. I was like, all right, I'll just live stream. And I mean, I'm honest. If I don't know what's going on, if I don't know this, I'm either building and you can see me doing it. And there's a famous episode that in building me, like I was using this one platform. It took me like 3 hours. It was so long that other people in other time zone, like first it was people in Czech Republic, then people in Australia, then people back in Brazil. Like I was online so long that other time zones were waking up. And like you see it in real time if I can't do it. But if I'm streaming and I'm like, I'm just going to really do it, it brings that authenticity, and it brought another level of something. I never had really built a personal brand. I was always doing it behind other brands for other people. And in live streaming, it kind of the best of both worlds. I got to do what I wanted. I got to show my personality. And, and what I was always in this area where I would do something and I never really got a lot of criticism, but I always feel like if you can find people that are really for you or really, really hate you, now you've got something. And until I did live streaming, I never really had people come out of the woodwork or really try to attack me. But the style in which it is conversational, it is going through the whole process. And I found some people really, I found also people really hate that. Like people come out of the woodwork.
Yeah. I mean, you're kind of disrupting, other people's thing, right? Like you're getting in there and you're just kind of peeling the curtain back, and a lot of people don't like that, right? Because you're really exposed. Like, hey, no, this is actually easier than other people are saying that it is. Let me, or even if it's difficult, let me show you like really how to do it in real time. You're not going to give people 10 videos about, you want to learn the thing, the next best thing in coding. And then you get to the next video, it's going to blow your mind. And then, like you just keep leading people on. No, just like get right down to it. And cause you'll lose people otherwise. So I think that's a really cool way to go about it. And people respond to that, especially now with the way that social media works, Instagram, TikTok, like people aren't perfecting the things that they put out online because they're just they just want to get things out and communicate with the world. And that's more important than, creating this super polished, perfected product that you get out there. So I think it's like a way that especially younger generation is more used to communicating with. So I'm sure they recognize, that resonates better with a lot of people now.
Yeah. I think it's just timing. Yeah. I mean, it's because a lot of people are like, oh, you did this, or, you caught the trend. I'm like, I remember it was 2015. And when Facebook announced they were going to do chatbots in live, and I was like, this is it. I'm like, nah, it's going to take over everything. It's going to move it. And I've always thought that. And like, look at how much people respond to video and chat. Like those are the two main things. So, I mean, I wish I was in China with like, was it Ping Duo and so much with WeChat and stuff like that. But I mean, it's so open right now. And like you said, I think people are really turned off by the polished look, and people just want real faces and real to do things. And, that's always been my thing. And so, yeah, it's been fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's a good lesson for people is to just kind of get it out there. Don't be super concerned about making something perfect. I think that's something that we, as entrepreneurs, as humans, just anybody has that like mechanism to want to be afraid to share something that's not perfect with the world. So I think that's a really good lesson in general is just get it out there, create the content. People will, if you're authentic, that's it. Just be yourself.
They'll start noticing that, right? Because we bog ourselves down in that. I remember the first time I saw Doc and you're talking about SendFox. And so I was sitting there and I caught that, and now I utilize SendFox, right? Because I was like, man, this is exactly what I'm looking for, right? I was using ConvertKit too. ConvertKit's good, but it's not, it's a monthly subscription or the annual package, to where SendFox is that one-time deal. You can buy the lifetime thing and you could enroll, I guess, for like $10 a month for the upgraded version, man. But I was like, just watching your video, and you going back and forth with, I forgot her name, from SendFox. Yeah, you're going back and forth with her. I mean, I was like, that was so intuitive for me to just sit there and watch and actually watch you have a actual conversation, watch you actually build it out, and then have a discussion because you didn't know specifically what to do on a portion of it, and she walked you through it and helped you. And I was like, man, this is where it's at for a lot of people, you know. And I know some people are like, well, maybe he can edit this to make it a little quicker, but it's like you still have an audience that really appreciates it, right? And so that's what you're looking for anyway.
Yeah, I really didn't, because every time I did it, people were like, listen, your analytics are going to go down. They're like, you shouldn't live stream like this style at this one. And it's all been wrong. Like I keep telling people, like, I understand maybe it doesn't work for everything, but like, I'll just like, I tried like I bring it up if people want to see it. I tried to be on YouTube. I tried to do all these things years ago. And, you know, this one, it's not much to some people, but I'm happy what it's doing now and to connecting to the right thing. We don't have the huge audience, but it jumped from less than 100 to now we have like, I don't know, 1,000, 1,050 on the channel in just a couple months. But, you know, I think like you were saying, because it just allows people to see it. The biggest episode, which I never thought, and it was just because a friend asked me to do it, how to build Netflix. That's like one of the biggest ones. I never really would have thought that was big. The only question is like somebody built it and they're like, okay, great. How do I like put on like Avengers and Marvel film? I'm like, listen, bro.
That's on the business side, like that.
I was like, you missed the point. I'm sorry. And I had to put like all these disclaimers in the comments. People are like, what kind of content can it be? I'm like, listen, you've got to deal with that. Like, you've got to talk to a professional. I'm just telling you how to build the structure of it. But it's been a lot of fun.
That's really cool. Well, that's a good transition into my next question. Because when I first heard about you, I saw you on Hustle Trends, on a Hustle Trends webinar, which was really cool. And that gave me the idea to reach out to you about, you know, having you on the show. But at that point, I assumed that you were strictly, or for, you know, what you did for the most part is you were no code or a developer of some kind. No code, maybe you did some, you know, standard coding development or whatever. But you're obviously much more than that. You do digital marketing and you help brands. I mean, that's actually before you got into the no code the way that you do now. You were a digital marketer and you helped brands, you know, identify themselves online. So what does your typical marketing strategy look like? And how do you identify a brand's unfair advantage?
So what was the first part of the question? No, I got the second one. What was
what does your typical marketing strategy look like for you? Yeah.
It's really manual. So I try to always do like cold outreach, do all this stuff. It was just, and I just hate trying to play the numbers game of like, I'm going to use this. I'm going to like blanket like 2,000 people. This is the conversion. So what I do is I look for companies that I'm interested in or that I like and I want to work with. And then I look at their process from end to end, from when they're trying to onboard a client all the way to when they're rendering service. And I either document it and I tell them why I love it, but then I'm like, this one part right here, I think you can do better. And that's how I'm going to help you. And by the way, that little part, this could make you X amount or save you this much time. If you're interested, let me know. Love to jump on a call. And that's what I do. So it's really manual. I wish there was like, because the thing is too, I want to work with a lot of really good brands. And so before I would put my heart and soul into something and they just would not care, or I never felt like it was an even exchange of like what I was doing for them to what I was doing. And so I was like, you know what, forget all that. I'm just going to go after the very best. And then I'm going to have a tier system. I have a tier system of like the A teams I want to work with, B and C. And when I first got started, I would only work with C because I still knew what kind of the A clients I wanted, but I needed to test in the certain demographic or a certain company, and then move up from there. And then once I started working with Vayner and AppSumo, and now I work with Trends once a month and just do their builds. And so once a month, the second Wednesday, I'm always doing random stuff for them. So I think I'm creating a micro SaaS next month. business for them. But yeah, so I just do that, and then afterwards, I mean, I'm just looking for a company that has it, and I can do this with companies or even influencers. That's why I would always do it with influencers before. And I'm going on a small tangent, but hopefully this helps you to know. But like even working at ESPN and working with certain athletes, and especially with CrossFit athletes or then WNBA, I have a thing where I'm not that talented, but I can see when someone's really talented or they have like they have the it factor and like they're about to pop. And I've done it over the years with like tons of like Brooke Wells and CrossFit. Like there was certain ones I'm like, oh, they're not popular yet, but they have all the intangibles and like we need to get them before they pop. And so just like doing that with athletes and influencers, I can do that with businesses where it works really well with like Product Hunt and companies that are just getting momentum. I'm like, okay, they have it. And then I'll go approach them before they either get big or yeah, that's the basic one.
No,
I have one more, but that's the main thing.
Yeah. I love it because you have that good eye. Because we just had somebody named Mike Ulrich on the show. I interviewed him solo. Andrew was not there, but man, he has the same eye for the music industry, right? And so it's like he wanted to be the rapper, he wanted to be the DJ, he wanted to be the drummer, he wanted to be that guy, but he just saw it like, look, I'm mediocre at all of this stuff, if at best. And he said, but what I do know, and because I love this space and this is where my heart is, I can identify the talent because it's like, I know I don't have it. And that was a hard pill to swallow at a certain point to where it's like, you want to be that guy, you want to be the drummer of a huge band or the guy that just stands out. But when you identify that and you're real with yourself, right? Even though at the time you're like, what can I do with my skill set? And then him specifically was able to identify that to up and coming artists to where it's like, okay, they're not there yet. They're not the Beyonce. They're not the Jay-Z. They're not, this or that yet. But if it's something within that 30 seconds that can make my hair stand up on my, give me the chills, the goosebumps, like the Whitney Houston effect, like that is the next person. And what he does is he gives them, each artist, a day to shine. But it's not somebody all these artists are just getting notarized or, hey, you're getting your one day just because you're that artist. It's you have to have the it factor. And he knows, and majority of the people he's put on, they get that opportunity, a chance that they wouldn't have before because, right, it's a flooded industry. Same way with digital marketing, same way with the no-code app type stuff that we're all used to. And man, it's just having that talent, which is cool. I thought that was a cool theme that, kind of tied into somebody that I previously interviewed. And I really like that answer, man.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. And I keep telling people, I'm really not that talented. I'm really not. It's just, I'm observant and try to do some things. So
well, you're talented in identifying the talent. You're talented in identifying, like, you know what it takes to put a business together. And so you're talented, brother. You know what I'm saying? It's not, we always do the imposter syndrome to a certain extent. We're like, I'm not that guy, I'm not good, but you're Doc Williams and that's where it's at. Right.
Yeah. You wake up one day and you're like, man, I know a lot about this stuff.
Exactly,
actually,
exactly.
And that's a cool realization.
That's really funny that you mentioned it. So my wife works with me. She's my project manager. And so for years in fitness, whatever, I tell you, so one of my best friends and my wife, they're probably one of the most talented people I've ever met in my life. On her aspect, she doesn't have the confidence a lot of times. And she's like, no, we can't do that. She's worked on like $1 million websites, all this stuff. It doesn't matter, up and up and up. But the thing is, we were at this one event and she was in photography for a long time and she was doing all these pictures. And I'll never forget, we were at this competition and there was another new photographer and he's like, am I doing it right? Am I allowed to be here? And I just find I think everyone just like, is this really, really happening? And that's why I'm like, I understand. I'm just I'm very comfortable with being uncomfortable and not knowing things. If you're in the right opportunity and position, you'll figure it out. You just got to find people that you just feel like you don't know everything and just be receptive to new things and you'll make it.
Yeah.
So It's been fun.
That's refreshing too. You know, just being comfortable, being uncomfortable. That's such a, you know, big thing, and letting people know that you're, you know, you don't know everything. You don't have to know everything. That's, I think, like a lot of us think that, you know, you have to know before you get into a space, before you start teaching something, you have to know every single thing about it. And that's not true. Like I've heard people say that, like, if you do an hour's worth of research on something, you know, you're a level above anybody who hasn't done that hour of research. You know what I mean? So even at that point, you could teach somebody something. And so, you know, just kind of, and then you just build on that. So I think that's really cool, to the point where, you know, I'm sure in a couple of years, you'll look back and you'll just be so glad that you started this journey. And you started teaching, and I'm sure it's already unlocked some doors for you, I'm sure, but that'll just kind of grow exponentially over the years.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. There's, and the reason I view this as an experiment, and the only reason I'm doing this is, I'm not sure if you've already heard this part of my story. So like, I just don't have to tell it, but the reason this whole started, even with this journey into live streaming and everything, and it was with COVID, I was at the same time, I was advising this really well-known streamer on Twitch. It was a group of them, and I kept telling them how to make more money. And if anyone's familiar with Twitch, or it's usually donations, sponsorships, all of these things, right? So you're going for different levels. People tip you. Either you can be a subscriber, you can have a merch, different merch that you can be selling. But I kept telling them, I'm like, you're limiting yourself, because people are going to want to pay you more, but you're doing these low cost barrier entry things. I'm like, you can be charging thousands, if not more, right off the bat. And I got all this pushback. They're like, oh, no, that's not going to be, like, you don't know streaming. You don't know what people can charge. And so I was so mad, because this happened around January, February. And I was like, I am going to make $10,000 minimum per month off of streaming. Like that's going to be it. Because a lot of them, some of them were making around $5K to, you know, $9, whatever, but they just were doing everything. I was like, you're just charging too little. And they're like, you can't charge that much on stream. So during it took 2 months, but yeah, we hit over 10K in revenue of live streaming. And I was trying to explain to them that, like, now they're trying to come around and stuff like that. But like, you're limiting yourself. You're really limiting. I think it's so much that you're just putting this ceiling on what's possible. And really, instead of anchoring what people value and testing the limits of how much they're willing to pay. I'm not trying to just gouge people, but I think people, I'm in this industry, I'm in this SaaS, I'm in this industry, I should charge X amount because everyone else charges this. It should be freemium. And I'm just like, why are you like, that's not your business. That's not you. Just go and test the market. So, you know, with this new competition in like MakerPad, I'm creating this thing called MVBs, minimal viable builds, but that's the whole thing. It's to show and validate and show how much people can make money very quickly with these projects, and stop floundering and just make these projects. And then maybe one day I'll make money, or maybe I have to have 1,000 users. It's like, no, like, how much do you want to make? Where do you want to go? Let's go build it. And
kind of reverse engineer it, figure out what do you want to make? How quickly do you want to make it? And reverse engineer from there to where, all right, what do you need to get that going? What's your MVP or MVB in your case? So how does that revenue generation model work for live streaming? I actually don't know too much about that, and maybe our listeners don't either. I don't know.
Yeah, so a lot of times people will go for just two different ways. They'll either do affiliate marketing, where they love the product and then they got the affiliate code. That's a major way. And then the other one is like sponsorship. So they'll say, hey, I'm using this tool. I want X amount to talk about it. But what I found is there are tons of other ways, including offering courses, offering memberships, and then offering different tiers of one-on-one coaching. And then you can anchor prices, because once they see a larger price, then everything else falls in place, and then you go there. And then so that's the streams that I do. So first I have all my affiliates for my tools, but to tell you the truth, I don't bank on it because a lot of the tools I suggest, they have a free model anyway. And in the build, I tell them like, don't pay for it until like you start making money. Like I'm very clear, like be lean if you're just testing. The other one is a Build It membership where they just get product and tool reviews for a $49 a month. So I'm like, hey, you can be in it. Instead of you spending hours and years trying to learn different tools, tell me what you're working on. I'll give you an overview of the tool in under 5 minutes. And tell me an application of what you're trying to build. Then there's tier systems of coaching from personal like side hustle to I'm running a business solo to I'm building a team. I need you to talk to my team to I need you to do it for me. And then it's done for you. So it's that tier system. And because now there's a pricing structure and all of those things, now when I live stream, so this is one of the things, and I did it with the new MVB of Clarity. I reverse engineer because people are like, you can't do this. You can't sell things live streaming. So the very first MVB, I'm like, we're going to call it Clarity. I'm going to give you clarity. It's going to be templates, the email prompts, how you can validate your idea in 10 days. What are you struggling with? And I listen to people live streaming. I'm like, okay, I put it on the sales page. I was like, it's $147. It's on pre-sale if you want it there. And then I just sold it live. I was like, see what you just bought? Awesome. I'm like, that's what I'm telling you how you sell.
That you could do. Yeah, absolutely.
So, the idea came up from like, I'm not sure if you've heard of like Loot Crate. But it's like a subscription box of like different themes of like they used to do Marvel and like anime and stuff like that. And I was like, that's what I need, but in a digital form. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create like just a crate of digital goods and what you need for digital, for entrepreneurs to launch their business. So it would be a tech business in a box. You would have all the things you need to run and get going, the processes and systems. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to start selling that kind of stuff. So now we have theme boxes that release once a month and everything like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you can keep coming out with different products, but you can also just sell your standard products. Like if you just at some point you're like, you know what, I'm tired of continuing to develop all these things. You still have products that are going to continue to sell because they don't lose interest. People are always going to want to know this stuff, and it's already out there. You've already done the work for it. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
And later on, we've talked about it because I use Notion a lot. I do a lot of different procedures through Notion, but I find that a lot of people, like, for example, have you guys bought anything from AppSumo or done anything on the... Yeah. Oh, well, you bought SemFox there. Yeah, that's right. So there's redemption coupons and everything like that. If you go through AppSumo, they opened up the marketplace and they wanted more people to tie in and do that instead of going through like the mothership of AppSumo. They wanted you to bring your own. So we built out their entire. So I built out the redemption coupons for other people to have their products on AppSumo, but what I found is a lot of people struggle with automation with redemption coupons for large scale, like 10,000 coupons, all those things. And you can do it with Zapier and Notion and Google Sheets. So building out like systems or processes that it works for AppSumo, that's great. But I had another client, they worked with insurance. So they were a psychologist. They actually needed a redemption system to work with insurance companies to make sure that they attract it. And so she's using that process even with this large scale insurance company. So there's so many different applications. So instead of just thinking about that and people are like, oh man, how do I do it? It's like, no. I'll sell you the template and I'll sell you the Zap coordination to do it. You can buy it in the store. So we're going to be building out that later too. Exactly right. So so that's where we're going with it.
Yeah, I think Zapier in itself is frustrating to a lot of individuals and a lot of users because they don't understand the framework of how to tie. Even though they might walk you through the process to a certain degree, it's still frustrating. I've been in there and I'm not a fan. Like, I'm just like, why isn't there something like, why do I need a Zap, to integrate what I want? I'm like, because it's so frustrating because it's like, okay, well, they give you the freemium, right? Then you can, but then you're always limited. And then it's like, man, what I need costs. And then it's like, it's not a bad thing. But then again, you look at it and then everything you want ends up being in there. And you're just like, this is just too much sometimes and overwhelming to some people. And I think, they give up instead of continuing through the process. So Doc, man, through your entrepreneurial journey, brother, from the highs to the lows, everything you've went through, and I know you like you said, you can't really, outside of, the candy shop and the card thing that you had going on at an early age, you really didn't have that typical, entrepreneur, like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur type journey. But through your entrepreneurial journey, man, what has been the most difficult thing to date?
Difficult, to build, or like just emotionally deal with?
Both, if you want to go that route. It could be one or the other. I mean, typically emotionally, and it doesn't really have to be a framework that you build inside, though. Something that you've had to battle through, right? Like imposter syndrome or anything along those lines.
No, I think, imposter syndrome wasn't. So this is a loaded question, but I'm going to say I never really dealt with imposter syndrome, because when I was younger, it was really difficult to read and just do normal things, just to be normal in public, I felt. And so I was always just trying to fake it to just be normal, like to read. So to me in business, I'm like, I was never fighting that feeling. I guess the biggest thing, I've told this a couple times, but the layering, so the layering effect, because I had such a struggle reading and everything, I was held back in second grade, and it was a good reason for my parents to do it, because it wouldn't have been good if I continued, but I really struggled with that. And I think that made a lot of decisions later in life. The reason I bring that up is failing at something and like I really thought was going to work became devastating until I learned how to emotionally cope. So I'll give an example. I've MVPs or building side hustles. I never felt pressured, because I'm like, this is a side hustle. And I always did other jobs. So if something failed, I'd be like, oh, well, whatever. It doesn't really matter. The gym, when I realized I wasn't made for that kind of business structure and having to leave, that was probably one of the hardest things, because then I had to admit that I wasn't equipped to go in this, because in my head, I was like, I'm going to have multiple locations. I'm going to have my own brand. I'm going to do all those things. So that was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. To build, I think it's like, whatever. But emotionally, I think that was the hardest to give up.
Yeah. And you put a lot into that. Into that business, I'm sure. There's a lot of time whenever you're doing something that's a physical product, it takes longer, it takes more. It's not that digital things aren't challenging. They're very challenging. They're in their own way. But when it's a physical thing, you almost like you have an attachment to it. And if you actually have a brick and mortar location, a store, a physical place where people show up and you're building a community, yeah, I can imagine that's not something that you just are like, it didn't work. All right, see ya.
Yeah,
you just walk away. It's
like
different.
And for like some people have financing when they were building their CrossFit gym, like to put it, no joke, because I was so lean and so trying to build this thing. To build the pull-up rig, I knew someone that was a welder, and we built all of the rigs. We built that entire business. We didn't have standard like weights and everything. We had beer kegs that I bought. Like we bought things off of Strongman. Like we were just a really crazy gym. We built if Highland Games, like if anyone's seen those, like we built all the stuff for Highland Games. We would do all of these crazy stuff. And I handpicked like being on Craigslist because I couldn't afford all the rowers. I would refresh and have all these apps to notify me when people were selling equipment. Drove all around the DMV, so like DC, Virginia, Maryland, to build that gym, and so that's where it was painful, and it was I didn't go into debt, but I spent every last penny monthly to get that going and to really go, and so that was the hardest one for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of sweat equity whenever you're putting that into it. That's tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Doc, I mean, I would definitely we'll have to have you back on, man, because this has been awesome. I think we could, dig into even more cool things that you're working on. But as we wrap up this episode, what is, you think, one piece of advice that you could offer to our listeners that might help them on their entrepreneurial journey?
You know what? The things I'm going to say, they're not sexy. They don't, I can't give you anything. Like, this is like, it never, like, don't underestimate writing down a plan and where you want to go in 6 months and a year. And then every day you just go out and do something. I'm not telling you to, like, I love Gary and I love everything he does. I don't go out and tell you, like, go hustle and crush it every day. Like, but just go do things that make you feel happy and that align with your goal, and just do it daily. Do it. And then afterwards, look at if you're closer to your goal. If you are, keep doing it. If not, think about how you can change it. And it's that incremental growth. You can pretty much outpace anyone else in your field if you are that structured. And that's it.
Yeah, it's like how do you plan on eating an elephant, right? It's one bite at a time. So as long as you're continuing to move forward with your plan, with your structure, and you're heading in the right direction, obviously you might have to take a step forward to take 2 steps back from time to time, but it's not always that hard, right? Especially if you plan it out, you set goals, you write things down, and you can start seeing that, okay, I'm achieving things as I go along this journey. I've already hit this. I've already got 1,000 subscribers, which was a goal, right? And then you kind of start seeing, look, all this work I'm actually putting in is paying off. And I love that answer, man. It's not always sexy, but it's like, man, you got to make it happen.
It's the least sexy thing about it, because things don't happen overnight. And if they do happen overnight, they're because of like 1,000 nights you did before, and it's those, but it's so hard to be consistent. I think it's so difficult for a lot of people, especially when you don't see the results right away. It's, you go to the gym for a week and nothing happens. It's like, all right, I guess, man, nothing happened. I guess I'll just slow down. It is very much like that, I think, with building a business, and especially with you putting content out there. You're not necessarily going to put a piece of content out and 1 million people are going to just share it all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then you just blow up. That might happen. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but typically it's just going to take a while, and then over time it picks up traction, and but it's not sexy.
It's consistency, man, right?
Exactly.
That's really where it's at.
Exactly.
But well, guys, I think that's a wrap for this episode. And Doc, from the both of us, man, we want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us and adding value in what we're doing on our podcast, brother.
Yeah, it was awesome to have you on, Doc. Guys, thank you so much for listening to That Entrepreneur Life. To learn more about what Doc Williams is working on, check out brandfactoryinc.com. If you like what you heard today, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or any other major podcast directory. You can also find us on all the socials and on our website at thatentrepreneurlife.com.
With that said, we also want to quickly give a special shout out to our family and friends to include all of our listeners, followers, and subscribers. If you find value in our show, guys, please consider making a small donation. Even just a few dollars helps us keep moving along and helps bring value to your entrepreneurial journey. Thanks for continuing to support what we do as entrepreneurs, and don't forget to join us next week for another episode of That Entrepreneur Life.
Thanks for listening to That Entrepreneur Life podcast. Be sure to visit thatentrepreneurlife.com to join the conversation, access our show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode as we continue to add value. Until next time.